Like to call the proper service meeting to order. First, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. Next is approval of the agenda.
Promo Peter.
By Councilor Bowles, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Nay. Motion carried. There are any errors or omissions or corrections to the minutes of July 18th? Errors or omissions? Errors or omissions? Seeing none? Well, then those are approved. Next is the reports. First is the building inspector's report
Promo.
by Councilor Williams. By Councilor One. Questions on the report? Seeing any? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Held by nay, motion carried. Next is the bylaw dog control officer's report.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Held by nay, motion carried. Next is the development officer's report.
Promo.
By Councilor Boyles,
Seconded.
seconded by Councilor Allen. All those, any questions on that report? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Held by nay, motion carried. Next is the street light request for intersectional in District 6. Yes, Melvin, you had to look at the area and you said it is in, meets all the requirements for street light policy for intersections.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. By,
I'll move it, but I want to speak to it.
yeah. By Warden,
Seconded.
by Councilor Akil. Okay. Warden, you want to speak on that issue?
Yes, I believe, I got to the intersection policy. I think my intersections were all used up by another counselor a few years ago. But I asked the CAO and he asked our engineer to have a look at it from a safety point of view, and it was the RCMP officers that suggested to me that perhaps it should be lit up and it's coming down the hill from Scottsburg into Durham, and it's a busy intersection, and it's really difficult to see at night there, so he suggested that we should have a light there. So that's, I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that, you know, I think it is a 10, what's our max now? It's 10 intersection lights, but my max had a long time ago, but I think that's why our engineer had a look at it.
Other questions? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Held by nay, motion carried. Next is the development of municipal property in Riverdale. It's in your package. It was prepared by Jeremy Lewis and spent by Bob McDowell. Would you want to speak on this?
Yes, thank you. A number of months ago, the council will remember that we had we were approached by, we're interested in the potential development of this property located across the road from Valley View Villa in Riverton. It's municipality owned property. The municipality staff were asked to look into possible usages for the property and for potential development benefits. So that's what this staff report was aimed to provide. So happy to answer any questions related to it. I think the ultimate result is that there would be potential benefit to development, but like with all potential pros, there are always cons as well. So happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. If it back to you.
Yes. Any questions for Director of Public Works. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read with some interest the estimates made by Mr. Lewis, I believe. I was surprised that his estimate value was, I think, worked out to less than $100,000 per unit. I'm not sure what he's putting out, PPs maybe. You can't build anything. That's a house to pay for that kind of money. So, and that's the big item in terms of taxes available to the county. I suspect he's not even halfway there. I suspect that that's at 200,000 units, it would be 18 million, 18 to 20 million. You do the math from there. But the estimates were what I would call very, very conservative. And one concern I did have, that because we have the school and the Valley Villa and the Riverview Adult Residential Center all along there on the side of the road, we pay a very hefty fire protection fee. I guess the question is, would that type of development right across the road, would that increase our fire protection fee? The way my understanding of the way they calculated that fee, must be close to 20 years ago, was they said, well, what happens if all three of them are on fire at once? What kind of fire flows would we need? And they might say, well, now what happens if everything up there is on fire at once? What kind of fire flow do we need? It was a great deal, the town stuff. It wasn't a very good deal. And in fact, I know Council Dewar in particular brought it up on many occasions, but semi-judicial bodies like the Utility Review Board, it is like kind of firm in the chief. They never make a mistake, and they never reconsider their decisions. We've been stuck with it ever since. So that's one question I would have: is this likely to increase our fire protection fee? Because it is in the same general area. Like I said, we already pay a very hefty fire protection fee because they assume all three of those properties will be on fire at once. That's a ridiculous assumption, I believe. That's what we've been paying on for the last 20 years. So that's a concern I would have.
Okay.
I'm not particularly opposed to the development.
I'd like you to answer that first.
Yeah, sure.
Brian, are you on the line?
I am, yes.
Did you hear the question from Councillor Parker?
I did. I would doubt that it would increase them. It would probably require some additional study, but we're pretty much paying the max there now. So I would be doubtful if it would increase the overall demand.
Councillor Parker, you had another second thing left.
Well, I just want to say generally, I'm certainly aware that we need more housing in this county. And this is, quite frankly, an ideal spot, also a nice classic rural community. But, so I suspect it's going to go ahead. We do need this type of development. Wish we had more choice of where to put it. That is we've been approached before, and that was in the eyes of the developer. That's been our idea. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Gordon Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the flip side, of what my brother just said, and hearing from our CAO that we're near the max, could this actually help us to spread out that cost to some of the private development rather than us, the municipal government, paying it all because of the units that are there, or would we still be paying the whole thing? Wouldn't there be a charge to those units for fire hydrant?
There would be a charge for fire for those units, but I'm not sure what it is. Brian, can you answer that?
Well, typically for residential, it's $260 per equivalent unit. This would be the first I guess probably multi-unit building that we would have. So depending on the number of units, it would help offset the charges that are charged to everybody else. It would be more revenue towards that fee, right? So I'm not sure how many units at the end. If it's 90 units in there, it'd be 90 times the 260, right? So
It could be some help toward a bill that we haven't been able to, my brother said, to do anything about for a long time. That's on the positive side of that development proposal. I agree that we need the housing. I don't think anybody doubts that. And it's in an area that's already serviced and whatnot. I think the only thing we have to be very careful of if we go further along the road with this is remembering that it is right next to where our seniors home is, that we're now building a new one, and also our Riverview Adult Residential Center. So I think we have to be really careful to make sure the rate stipulations are in there to protect the living conditions for those people. You know, we don't want a lot of noise, we don't want a lot of other things that can come along with housing developments. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think it has to be very carefully watched in the planning stage to make sure that we do protect those residents living right across the road that can do nothing about whatever shows up on the other side. We can, and we have to do that. Sure.
Anybody else? If you were.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering how far along this is in us as the county. We have quite a bit to say of what they can really do with that and what they can't do with that. How far along is it?
It's a question of is the proposal itself. From
Exactly, is there a date on it that we have to get back? Or?
No, there's no, and I guess I would probably condition this by saying that we're not obligated to go with any particular developer or interested party. So I know that the originally interested party is still interested. They haven't put any kind of deadline stipulation on their interest. However, I think if council is interested in this, I think decisions would have to be made about how you're going to approach a potential sale of the property, and then do you open it up to additional parties? Go with that original party, or is there some other mechanism that you use? But as far as the initial interested party, there's no timeline stipulation, and they have reiterated their interests as recently as last week.
So this year, are you looking for the council to give you direction to start somewhere?
Yeah, I think where we're at right now would be, we provided this report for information purposes, and for discussion purposes. When we were tasked, whatever it was 6 months ago, to look into this further, I think council at that point wanted more information about, potential interest in the land, potential revenue streams, things like that. That's what we aim to present here. I think the next step for staff to act on anything here would be to get some kind of a directive from council to indicate whether to go to a public tendering process, whether to identify, a fair market value for the property and try to enter into negotiations with initially interested parties. So I think that's sort of the starting point if council, deems that there's a level of interest in advancing this further.
Any questions?
Property belongs to the municipality, Victor County, and in order to assess this property, they have to determine whether what our fair market value of the property is by one way or another. Council has not made that decision. So until that decision is made, I don't think it's.
Was would have to get it appraised by someone else. So determine what the
There's a number of ways that you can determine fair market value. You can appraise, you can advertise the property for sale. So there's a number of ways in which you can determine fair market value. The council hasn't even made a decision yet that they want to divest themselves of this property. So I think that would, this report was just an information report that council has asked for as a result of the interested party in the property. So council, I think, has to go back to the beginning and determine whether or not they even want to divest themselves of the property.
And the only thing is, let's say we go out to market, we get a price, and then we put it out there, looking at getting rid of this property. We want it to be developed for housing, not just one unit. Somebody put in a price, say value of the property is 50,000, somebody goes back 100,000, also you'll lose for one house on it. Well, you don't want that property to go for that reason, right? We want housing because of the county's desperate need of housing. My daughter's been looking for a place for 2 years now. There's nothing out there, so. And nothing at reasonable prices and nothing that's worth living in, so. We are in desperate need. Just getting back to Ontario, you wouldn't believe the places that are going up left, right, and center. Halifax, same way. Everywhere is desperate need of this housing, so you gotta be very careful how we advertise it. It should be for development of housing, just for residential use, right? So I guess it's council's decision. Do you want to go that route to, see what the fair market value of that property is? And come back to council and then we make a decision what way we want to go for the market.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, looking at fair market value, looking at the fact that we want it for a certain type of development, not just who will pay the most for it. Should we put out like an RFP like we do on many things, stipulating that what this is to be used for? Would we not get fair market value then and finding out what the bids are to come in? We still make the final decision whether we wanted to go for whatever the RFPs come in for, but that's a way of getting fair market value plus stipulating that it has to be used for certain purposes. So I don't know what the steps are to getting to that. We could leave that, I guess, with our staff, to develop an RFP that would lead us in that direction. But it seems to me that the RFP would it not give you a fair market value to see what the bids come in?
Is that a possibility, Brian?
Yeah, that would probably be the most, if council wants to broaden it beyond a single developer, an RFP, you would issue your RFP, you would put your parameters on it that you're looking for multi-tenant uses, or and you could even stipulate the minimum number of units that you want, and have them bid the price in, and then that does establish your fair market value. And as well, it also gives you the ability to evaluate multiple proposals, because somebody may be only going to build 20 units, somebody may be going to build 100 units, right? So then it gives you the ability to evaluate the various proposals based on different criteria. So that's probably the prudent way to approach this.
Thank you, Brian. Councilman Keeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of piggybacking on what Karen was speaking about. I think before we jump to talking about tender processes and RFP processes, I think we as a council person will decide when we want to divest this property. Is this something that we want to consider? I think that needs to be our first decision once it. And if so, I would agree going out the RFP process to the fact that we have more control, and the fact that we're able to put in, guide the process of the land use and and award the more, most appropriate, I guess, tender on that property. But I think, going back to what I said earlier, I think we really, before we make any decisions, we have to decide if we want to move ahead with this, with the sale of this land. That's our first question.
Councilor Door. Thank you.
I don't think it's right. If I want to put a bid in on that, I will. Joint stock, and stuck my name on the number, and I put in the same price as somebody that's gonna do it, put one place there or nothing there. It's gotta be for everybody. Because if it's only gonna be one place there, one property, well, that's too bad. If they're gonna sell it for $250,000 or $500,000, if I got the money or you got the money, and some resident in the county wants it, well, it's there. I don't understand how you can pick and choose, and you're picking and choosing right there, okay? Who can be there, who can't be there.
I'm not picking.
John, but I mean, the way we're
This
talking.
council pick and choose.
Yes, and that's up to council. I only got one vote, and, you know, there's likely people that would buy that property. There's that one big place there, one nice place to keep everything else out of there, so. I'm just trying to do it kind of a fair way too. Thank you.
Sir Thompson.
Just a question, would not the best way to establish fair market value is to get a commercial appraiser in there? If you do it just solely by an RFP, what happens if you only get one interested party for that land right now? Somebody's already queued up for it, so they'll definitely get one. What if we only get one? How do you establish fair market value then? Would not some type of an appraisal be the way to establish fair market value?
But again, we did it for the school, we picked one, right? Gave that away for some,
Never got the money yet, did we?
because we're looking, we want housing, right?
I understand that. I'm not
So,
trying to put my foot over that, but I'm trying to establish fair market value. I don't think you can establish fair market value with an RFP, because you run the risk of only one person, one proponent submitting. Then you don't have anything to compare against.
but I guess, and then again, it comes back to this council, we make the decision whether that's fair market value or not. And it depends on what the proposal was for, right? If it's for $20 million facility.
Yeah.
Then we have to decide if it's worth it over for an extra $20,000 or $30,000 on price land.
I just raised that point.
Yeah.
Maybe there'd be a line of companies that want to build some fantastic housing in town. It could get all kinds of bids, but right now, we have no of one. So I just raise that as a concern.
Councilor Dave Parker.
Chair, on Councilor Thompson's point, I agree. We may want to take a two-pronged approach where we hire a commercial appraiser to give us confidentially, obviously, estimate of value, and go through an RFP. Of course, we're not obligated to accept any offer just because we put it in RFP. The other point, I believe there's an ECE that's leasing up a farm land. That expires next June, or what it is? 23.
It was 3 months cancellation policy.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. We have to be sensitive to that. But I'm asking if staff would supply to us, not even next week, but rather in the future. What other lands the county holds that are, let's say, available for residential development? I don't think we hold a lot, but there may be some. And the reason why this one's so attractive, of course, is the water and sewer there, and very, very close to town. But do we have, if we want to encourage housing, and I believe that's not a very big question, what other options do we have? So, and we'll answer that right away, Mr. McDowell.
Yes, thank you. And municipality does have a number of other properties throughout the county. And I wanted to point out that our GIS group within our staff has worked with our summer student actually to create a good database of those properties that would be easily identifiable. So that's something that we can provide sort of en masse in a very short order municipality-owned properties throughout the county. But we do have a number of properties throughout the area. Does that answer your question?
Personally, yes. I just want to see that listing of what might be available, you know, and it's suitable for housing. And if it's in Lansdowne, it's not suitable for housing. Too far out. But if it's close to town, then, you know, it's not a sharp bank, it's a brook or something like that.
Yeah, thank you. We can provide that in short order, a comprehensive list of properties. I'd also like to point out, if I may, that Brian and I chatted about this last week, knowing that we were coming into this meeting, about the fact that at the time, a number of years ago, I believe when we were looking at this building being constructed, property had been reviewed for potential subdivision. So there are other options as well beyond selling the property as a whole for development that could be reviewed also. So just as food for the thought for council, there are other alternatives that depending on how council suggested move. And then finally, I want to point out that regardless of who council may or may not decide to sell the property to, the ball is in the municipality's court on what restrictions or allowances it may have for developers to develop this land. So if council decides that, yeah, it's just going to be meant for multi-unit residential, and that's one thing. If you decide that, you know, in alternative proposals, then that's you know, that's something else that council can do. Council is in the driver's seat here. Should stress as well. Whatever route you go, you can make a decision on what does or doesn't get developed. Similar to what we'll eventually have with our land use bylaw or development agreements and things like that. If you currently have any sort of, I think it's identified before, sort of reflecting that type of mentality.
Gordon, did you have a question? Thank you, Mr. Chair. I missed what Mr. McDowell has to say, so maybe he had the answers to the questions. Back to fair market value, and Karen mentioned that there's different ways to determine that. Fair market value, you know, has always been what the, you know, willing buyer and willing seller are, you know, to meet on. You might think your place is worth twice as much as it is, but unless there's a willing buyer and a willing seller, but we're talking here a different stipulation and agree with Councilor Doer and trying to be fair and saying, well, you know, put it out to everybody and then you'll get, you know, your maximum out of it maybe. Somebody's got an extra 20 million set aside somewhere and wants to build a mansion there, then they can. But that doesn't help solve our housing crisis any by having one nice big home there. So I think we have to think long and hard if we want to dispose of this land. Do we want to return it from agriculture where it is now to a mansion? Or do we want to use the land, you know, to help solve the housing crisis? And I know we did put, we were asked at a meeting about a year ago, I think headed up by Pat Nunn's office, was on housing, for a list of any municipal land we had. I think that list, Brian may know, has already been prepared. But the province put out a list here not long ago, of the land that they had available to this county. And it wasn't very much, because one of the properties is all around us. This land has been put out there is available for housing. Who wants to live down in the swamp? I'm not sure, but that is part of the land that's available on the province list. So there's not as many sites as you might think. But Dave said Lansdowne's no good, and probably West Branch wouldn't fit. But has to be somewhere near, and the East Victor one was even a stretch, in terms of travel and whatnot. But so there's no doubt that we're talking about an ideal site. So whether we can, how much we want to get out of it in terms of dollars, how much we want to get out of it in terms of helping solve the housing crisis are two different things. I think we have to be very careful, put a lot of thought into it, but the first step is to get that fair market value. Whether I'm not against doing it, with an appraiser, but an appraiser is taking looking at what's happened in other areas and the same general area and coming up with a value. But if we put a stipulation on there that it's used, for multi-unit housing or whatever, there won't be a lot of comparisons. Because Brian said, we're not going to have a lot of them around. So, an appraiser, will do the best it can, but I think it's different because there's not going to be a lot of comparisons in the rural area anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councilor Watt.
Before we go any further with this, it's because council should make a decision whether we want to proceed with it. Divesting this property, right? And that should be your first step tonight, is whether we do want to go ahead. Like all this conversation doesn't mean anything if we don't want to go ahead and sell this property. So I think if we need a motion to do that, put it on the floor now, like it's a council.
Where do we go with
Is the council willing to sell this property? Is that what we want to do? That's step one first, and then we go from there. And I'd like to have a motion if that's true.
There's a second. The motion was to see if council is willing to sell this property. Divide the rest of the property. And I'd say find out what the fair market value is.
That would be the second part.
Sorry.
First part is the project. First part is the final.
First is to see if we want to do this, and the second part we do establish fair market value. Okay. Fourth.
Couldn't vote to divest of this property if I knew it was simply going to, a $20 million home there. So I think if we're going to agree to divest of it, it has to be, for the right reason. Otherwise, we might as well stay producing hay. So I think we just make an overall decision that we want to divest of this property, but then we move ahead, get an appraisal and put it up for sale. That doesn't achieve the purpose of the housing. If we do that, once we've made that decision to divest, we move along with that, and we haven't solved the housing or haven't helped solve the housing problem at all. So I don't agree with just voting to divest the property, if that's what we're doing with self-reliant.
Do you want to add that to your motion? Or with the housing crisis?
Well, it's not right. Staff recommendations. Again, you go into staff recommendations, they have to be able to make one a set of site-specific design standards and so on and so forth. So that would, I would think, help protect us from just one person running property. If we put that specific information. As we go further, I think right now, we just want to know, do we want to sell property?
I guess we want to sell it for how, with how.
Yeah, we could add that.
Yeah, that and not for single use. That's certainly key.
I think maybe if we added the word explore, the divestment of the property, I think we don't want to be hard and fast because we may get into it and it may not be what we thought we were getting into 3-6 months down the line. I think if we say that we want to explore the possible sale of the property. I think we choose our words wisely in that, and I think that can kind of cover us on the fact of, you know, of proposals and stuff. So we may not get any proposals that we want to move forward with. But yeah, we don't want to get into saying, well, we agreed to sell the land. So I think we have to be very careful with our choice of wording. So I would make the suggestion that we add in something that, like I stated before, that explore the opportunity to divest or something along that lines. That would be my suggestion.
It eventually comes back to council for us to make that decision whether we're going to sell it or not. So I think we have the protection in there. So if we put it out to an RFP, if that's the route that we do, and we could go out to get the property appraised in the meantime, we have some comparison of what the proposal is, and we'd have to decide. But I think that we have to make a decision whether we're willing to look at divesting this property for only housing or something like that. Explore.
I agree with your words, what Councilor Regino had to say, but also, you know, to develop the housing price or something in there so that it's, can prevent us from moving in the direction of the public $20 million home. But those words to help with the housing price, we're not going to solve the housing price. We can help, you know, but if those few words are in there, then I think it makes it, you know, what we're doing is more clear to the public.
Agree with that? Get that? Eric?
We don't eventually.
So read that.
For divesting of the property. For divesting of the property for multi-housing project to help with the housing prices. By way of an RFP, is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
You have something?
Well, I think we're kind of beating something we don't have to here. I think all we have to do is put our hands up and say we agree that we explore this or not, no motion, and then move on. That's my opinion. Show our hands.
But first, I think we need motion to explore it. So, explore, right?
Well, my suggestion is show hands if we want to explore or not. Don't, didn't want. I don't think we need motion. We have agreement around the table. That's my opinion.
We need a motion, Brian?
You have one on the floor, so, I think you need to decide if you want to, and I think it is explore at this point. And an RFP is different than a tender. A tender is very specific. You're going out and saying, we have this situation, and you're telling the person exactly what you want. An RFP process is you have a problem, a housing crisis. You are asking proponents to provide submissions that will help address that. So it gives you the latitude to look at different options. And at the end of the day, council, with all RFPs, you reserve the right to accept any or reject all. And you are part of the RFP process is you disclose that nobody can has any liability towards the county if you reject them all. So you define all the rules in an RFP process. So I think your motion is fine. It does. I think it does the same thing that Deputy Warden Murray is saying. We just need an agreement to explore it. But I think where you have the motion on, I think it's fine.
Question? Question's been called for. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Covered by a nay. Nay. Motion carried. Okay. Got that? Next, is there any emergency resolutions? Seeing none. During the meeting.
Good evening, I'll call the Financial Services meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First, we'll start with the approval of the agenda.
So moved, Peter.
Seconded.
Moved by Councillor Boyle, seconded by Councillor Parker. All those in favor signify by saying aye. The contrary nay. Motion carried. Next, we'll call for errors and omissions, correction of minutes for the July 18th, 2022 meeting. Go ahead, Board Parker.
Under correspondence from River John Recreation. The first line, I said that he understands the reason why the group would be updated. Supposed to be upset.
Okay, thank you for that error. We'll get that corrected. Any other errors or omissions? Any other errors or omissions? Hearing none, I will call those minutes approved. Next, we have reports. The first one is for the recreation report. Your pleasure, councillors. Moved by Councillor Butler, seconded by Deputy Warden Murray. Any questions or comments on the recreation report? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary nay. Go ahead, Board Parker.
I think that was the part in there where I read, working with Petco to establish an alternate route to the trailhead at Highway 376. As we all know, that burnt here 2 weeks ago. So is it going to be something come to this council in terms of like who's responsible for funding a new bridge there right now? Anybody trying to get in the trail can only go so far, or if you're coming from the southern direction, you're stopped. It's fun. So I'm just wondering if there's been any, who is ultimately responsible for that trail, I guess.
That's a very good question, Brian. Are you have an answer?
I don't have an answer for that. The active Pictou County coordinator is working with other levels of government and the Trails Association to potentially identify funding for that. But there would have to be, depending on what the levels of funding come from other levels of government, there may be an ask to the town and municipality at some future point. But right now, they're just working with other levels of government to try and identify solutions, I guess. So.
Okay. What's your question? Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I think I did read online somewhere too, they were in some kind of talks with TNR or province somehow. I'm not sure what involved that was, but there was some talks.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I think it's just important that, well, we play our part, other levels of government, I think, needs to come from various levels, but it's really important to a lot of people, once that connection's been broken. So I just think it needs to happen very quickly, not be dragged over a whole year planning process or something. But somebody has to take the bull by the horn somewhere, and we're gonna be playing some part of the shore. Hopefully, that active county coordinator can lead the way pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call again with the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the communications report for the month of July.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Boyles, seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments on the communications report? Go ahead, Councillor Parker.
I noticed that the wheelchairs on the beaches attracted a lot of interest. And there is a movement afoot, we'll call it, to work at developing a plan to allow hippo chairs to be stored and used from the Melbourne Beach. Then it would only be necessary for the various agencies or individuals who are wheelchair bound. Get the person to the beach. Be available to use it from there. So that's, we're hoping that can be put in place for the next beach season. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Any other questions or comments on the communications report for the month of July? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Go ahead, Councilor
Well,
Parker.
it should have been that somewhere along the line, probably going to come before this council asking for some financial assistance for that. But you,
Thank you for that addition. Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the emergency services report. Package there. Is there anything you'd like to add there, Evan?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick update on some of the initiatives I've been working on. Since starting in May, we've seen approximately 17 new applicants into our county, which is a large upgrade. I think the average for the year was around 1.6 applicants a month. So we've seen a big spike, and I credit most of that to Suanne, our communications team, putting those ads out on social media and helping link our applicants with our site and information sent off to me so I can connect the chiefs and applicants. Also, when meeting with chiefs and leadership, one area that they all agreed they needed support was recruitment of new firefighters. With less people working in the areas they serve, it's becoming increasingly difficult to supply the full complement of firefighters, which is why on the report that I submitted in your package, you'll see the largest area of response is actually Neutral and Ottawa, which works really well in our county currently to kind of fill the gaps through the daytime when our volunteer numbers are pretty low. Also, as part of my role, I partnered with some local high schools to implement a junior firefighting program. Through this program, we're going to see students at our high schools receiving electric force credit for joining the local fire departments and participating in the required training to receive the basic level 1 firefighting qualification. Last week, I met with several stations interested in taking part in this program, and they're located strategically around the county to ensure all students from anywhere in our county will have the ability to join a station local for them. My hope is that after this program is over and they get to know their local firefighters and their stations, they may stay with their stations long term. Another area that I'm working on is training. I've been pretty encouraged to see to organize some local recognized training through Nova Scotia Firefighter School. This hasn't happened for several years in Victor County for a number of reasons. COVID had a lot to play with that as well. So far, we have close to 30 applicants from our county who are applying for their basic training, as well as some will be going through a fire service instruction course, and they're going to become sort of our county instructors to be more involved in training our new firefighters as they come up through programs. The other areas I mentioned last month, including dispatching and the accountability systems, are still ongoing, and I'll provide you with an update as these programs become implemented. Thank you.
We need a motion on the floor. Okay, moved by Councillor Wadden, seconded by Councillor Parker. Go ahead, Councillor Wadden.
Thank you. Great report, and thank you very much. It's nice to see new applicants coming forward. That's really good news. Just on the recruitment level, are there any other suggestions for how we can encourage recruitment or retention support too, but try and get the ear? It's a talk from a few of the firefighters concerning some type of we have the federal income tax program for the firefighters and the provincial. Is there something the municipality can do to encourage more recruits for fire services? And I'm not sure what we're able to do here at this municipality. We use our property tax, give them credit, something like that. But just kind of what kind of recruitment ideas have you been?
Thank you very much for the question. So this is probably going to be a huge part of my role is trying to get new firefighters into our county. So I do have a few ideas that I've been working on. A portion of that has been what you talked about with some funding going towards our volunteers and maybe on an honorary basis. That was something that was mentioned in our fire study report that they thought we may see more volunteerism through that. I will say, however, in talking with our local towns that all pay honorariums, they're struggling with the same issue that we are. So it's not, I don't think that's gonna fix I don't think that's our solution long term. I think it may help. But I'm also working on, some recruitment videos, that I plan on having played in our local theaters and drive-ins, to hopefully catch some younger people's, interest. There was a municipality in New Brunswick, I actually stole an idea from, so I can't take the credit on it, but, they put together a short recruitment video, it's about 30 seconds, and they played it for every movie in their theater. And they actually had 36 applicants within the first 2 months, just from that. So that's something that I'm working on, currently, compiling images and videos and sort of, to hopefully be able to put something together. As we move forward, there may come a need to have somebody do a recruitment video for us, have our local stations come out for a day and for different scenarios, training scenarios, and show the interesting part of firefighting. So that's another option that I'm working with. And that's pretty much it for now. This junior program has been taking up a lot of my time in terms of working with the departments to create a guideline that all follow, so the school's happy on their end, so they can achieve this elective credit through their high schools.
Thank you.
Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, Mr. Hale, I want to say thank you. It's a very good report, very powerful. Laid out so we can see which departments are most active, which ones have lesser activity. And several of the ideas that you touched on just now, particularly the one with high schools and the junior program. That's an excellent start, we'll say. And I really like that idea too, of using theaters and other media where our younger people are likely to be exposed to both the need and the benefits of being a member of their local fire department. So I just want to say, I don't have a question. Congratulations, keep up the good work.
Okay, Warden Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to issue a note of caution, I guess, on honorariums. That was in our study. I know that was done, our prior study, and when it was brought up, you know, at meetings with the fire departments, there wasn't a big want for it. And the feeling was I volunteer. I'm not, if I'm getting paid, I'm not volunteering anymore. They wanted to be volunteers. I was a bit surprised by that. I thought that, you know, well, fair amount, a little bit of money, but no, they did. They said, no, we want to be volunteers. And so I think it's just something we have to take very carefully with. You don't cross the line from a volunteer to a partially paid employee or whatever. But I do agree that, you know, this is probably the most critical area we have is attracting new fire. Otherwise, we're going to be to the point someday of having to have all paid fire, although we don't have very many when it gets to that point. But one thing I wanted to mention was we have a lot of new people in the county, a lot from Ontario, an awful lot from Ontario, from other areas too, but a lot from Ontario. Some of these people, you know, have been volunteers in Ontario and various communities for a long time, and they're well trained themselves. But the other advantage for them, as well as for local people, there's no better way to get to know your community and to get to know other people in your community than by volunteering of any type. Of volunteering with your fire department, you'll soon get to know, you know, a bunch of people in your community, and they'll help you and your family to adapt here. I think it's important to remember that's a new sort of pool of recruitments. Some not trained at all, but would like to get to know some of the neighbors, but some very well trained. But be very careful, I think, on the honorarium one that we will have to make sure the firefighters are on side, firemen and firewomen are on side of what we're doing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyles?
Yeah, can answer this or Matthew Ryan, but I ran into Joe McDonald today in Glasgow, and I asked him, I wonder when we're going to have another meeting of the fire liaison committee, and he said it's gone, you're done. Is this the truth that there's no more fire liaison committee?
Should, are you able to answer that? Or whatever, go ahead.
So at the last association meeting that took place, the association voted to disband that committee. And have me sit in on those meetings, those association meetings. So from now on, I'll be attending every association meeting and bringing the concerns back here and to be discussed. But yeah, they voted as an association to disband that committee.
But don't you think it would have been nicer to take it back? We were told about it, but nobody knew about it that I know of anyway. I know that Joe did, but I didn't as a council.
Yeah, my apologies. I should have mentioned that.
All right, okay, Councilor Bonner.
Just on that. So you can go to 17 or 18, we have 18 fire departments. You know, each individual, you can bring back their concerns.
So no, the way the liaison committee worked was it functioned through our association. And so every 4 months, we have an association meeting held somewhere in our county that has representation from every station.
Yeah.
And so they'll bring their issues to those meetings and they normally went from those meetings to the committee and then the committee to hear. So I'll just attend those association meetings.
Association, not each individual.
No, I won't be attending each individual session, no.
Okay, we have a mover and seconder. I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we'll move on to the warden's report, for the month of July. Okay, so moved by Councillor Dewar. You have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any questions or comments for the warden on this report? Seeing none? I'll call for the vote. Would you like to speak on that, Warden Carver?
Not really, I just want to bring it, didn't notice, our CAO decided that this should be financial services report. It was always before the property services.
Yes.
But you got it a lot more appropriately here, so if anybody's wondering why it's in a different place, not that it makes any difference. That's all.
All right, thank you for that clarification. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. Next, we have the accounts paid for the month of June 2022. It's your pleasure, councillors. Councillor, okay, moved by Councillor Butler,
I'll second.
seconded by Councillor Parker. Any questions or comments for any of those accounts paid? Go ahead, Councillor One.
Thank you. I guess he's directed to Brian. Brian, knows I Valley, we have $48,000 going to I Valley, and I thought we were through having to pay that, but we're just wondering, this was for previous services, or are we still, do we still pay I Valley?
We are in the process of winding it down. When I think it was back in May, I gave 30 days notice to all the kind of subcontractors of termination. But in their case, there was actually a clause in the contract that was 90 days. So this is probably the last, I think, payment for iValley.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Palmer.
Just on that, Brian. Have they done enough work for that 48,300? Like, were they spending as-bills or whatever to, or have they been doing work for those 3 past months? We give them the bang for that, that's what I guess that's.
Yeah, they've been doing some work, but really it was a wind down. We've kind of moved it to a different structure, and how we're dealing with permits and things like that. So they did some work on land leases and things of that, but we were kind of in a wind down mode.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments of the accounts paid? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay. Motion carried. And our final report is our transfer tax fund for information purposes. You'll see that for 22-23 for the month of July. We're still doing quite well on our transfer tax. And seems like the trend is continuing. Any other comments, questions from the chair? Seeing none, move on. Number 12, update satellite services in Pictou County. In your package, you received a memo to the Financial Services Committee meeting from our CEO Brian Cullen concerning the Development of Nova Scotia, the subsidy program that was announced, and then the amendment that was announced, I guess, through a press release on August the 11th. With the expansion of that to help, I guess, quote unquote, Nova Scotians get access to internet services faster. Brian, do you want to add comment to that?
Nothing really to add beyond what is in the memo. It is a way for us to expedite service to some residents. I think while the subsidy is there, I'm not sure what the delivery times are for Starlink at this point, but at least the residents will have the opportunity to partake in the rebate program. I think the rebate program, personally, I think will be a challenge for some because it is a rebate program and you have to actually put the money out. And if you check the Starlink page and you kind of go through the steps to order, it was, I think $947 is what is due when you place your order. So I think for some people, that will be a challenge for them to come up with $947. But that's not our program. It's a provincial program, the way it's been designed. So, but I do think that's a challenge. But I don't think there's anything else to add from our perspective. It's roughly 2,200 homes. And the map kind of shows that it's throughout the entire municipality. It's not located to any one particular area, so it is spread out.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Councillor Palmer.
Yeah, I wasn't here for the last meeting. I guess it was brought up at our last council meeting by Councillor Butler. And I guess he raised the thing that we're excluded from the rebate program. I recall when the Premier was here, made a presentation to this council, he said that we were going to be the pilot project. So when the program came out, we're excluded from that program? Is that what I'm saying? Yeah. That's not what he was saying when he was here that night. The other thing is that I'm surprised that the rebate was available to 3,700 homes. Is that province-wide? Was it? Then they come back and say, well, there's 5,000 here in Pictou County alone. Like, the numbers just don't add up. I don't know how you can say there's 3,700 that are under service, but then we come to this county and there's 5,000. And then we lose out on Development Nova Scotia money because we're overestimating the unserved number of residents out there. Just nothing adds up, right? Just, and then I guess we're down to 2,000 that are eligible. And how do they determine if you're eligible? Because I have a person that's been asking me about this program because I told them about the program. And I didn't realize it wasn't offered to this county, so, and now there's 2,000 that or 2,200 that's available. So how do you find out if you're one of those 2,200?
So if you go to there is a link, I think it's on the Develop Nova Scotia page, and there's a search engine there. So if you type in your address, it will, if you're at 122 Foxbrook Road, we'll say, if that's an eligible address, when you type that in, it'll populate that's an eligible address, and then there's a process that you'll go through.
This person's been asking me because I told him what the Premier said here that night, and then when I read this But our package came through, I was kind of surprised that, we were excluded from that program, so, thank you.
Councillor Parker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm looking at the map that was circulated as part of this, information package. First, command, Councillor Butler, we go right on this. We've been informed early on that we were out. So, thank you, Councillor Butler, for getting on this. Finding out that they're be eligible. But Randy's point about number for the developer, so we know all about their ability to math. It is laws. Backwards. This map, I have a great difficulty understanding it. I see three colors of dots, very light blue and medium blue, then black. I'm assuming here it's black that don't, that may be eligible, that would not have service by the first two methods, or provided service, fiber and wireless powers. Is that correct, Brian?
Correct. The black are the target properties.
Yeah, and it's certainly true that they are dispersed throughout the county. Though there's many areas that don't show any dots at all. In and around towns, there's virtually no dots. As you get further out, all kinds of dots. But particularly east of our valley, up to Sunny Brae. I see a great number of light blue dots. I see a few moderate blue. Only when we get to the Brae, almost past the Brae. I see a few black dots. Through Elgin, and Lorne, many black dots. My area, 289, where I understand it's going to be fiber, all kinds of light blue dots. But as you get farther out, and what I referred to as the backcountry, that's the area between Road 289, which is paved road, and the Western Valley, it's also paved roads. A great number of roads in there and a great number of black dots. I guess my question is, should we be hoping that the residents take the initiative and find out themselves? Or should we be identifying those properties that are not going to be serviced and let them know that they can at least apply? Now, with 2,200 possibilities in this county, and only a total of 37,000, no, 3,700, excuse me, and some of them are already taken. Not terribly optimistic that many of our residents are going to qualify. The other concern I have is that, yeah, it's roughly $1,000 to sign up. And the person I know that's getting billed for it every month is paying $160 a month. Not 100. Maybe he has a higher level of service, I don't know. But there's a lot of black dots in there in areas that I represent. I guess I'm asking through our staff if I can meet with Mr. Burley and ask him to generate some specifics for me. So I'm quite sure all these people are blissfully unaware that they're not going to get service. We've been advertising, it's commonly here on the radio ad nauseum. It's common, we have it. You know, well, there's a lot of my residents aren't going to have it. They're going to be annoyed about it being county generally if we don't say, listen, there's a situation, we need you to apply here. If we wait until the end of this year, it's too late. That 3,700 spots will be gone. And there'll be a lot. I have one further. Well, it was my understanding, this is Director Brian, that there were going to be at least 2 towers, one on top of White Hill, one over on the Montreal Road, up on the high country. And they should be able to service much of that area that I'm referring to as the backcountry. It's mostly gravel roads, new paved roads, but it's mostly gravel. There's houses scattered throughout, never any great densities. are those two towers still gonna be part of our project? The tower on top of White Hill, tower on top of the, or up the Montreal Road, as you probably call it, airlock.
They're not part of the rapid deployment network that I see here.
No, they never were.
But they are still looking for other sites, alternative sites. We signed a lease last week for a property that's not even a tower site that's not on here, out towards I think Springville. So Springville. So they are still looking for additional sites to help fill in. One of the things with this Develop Nova Scotia, it's serviced by the end of 2023. So in some cases, there's some dots where there's some natural kind of fiber routes, and then it seems to go black. That's because those areas are beyond December of 2023 for construction build out. So it's not that we won't necessarily be serving them. It's just under this program, we won't be serving them by the end of December of next year as part of the build out.
As a follow-up, then, I had that specific question. The original plan that I would promoted and sold to my residents was that there would be a tower on top of White Hill. There would be a tower of the Montreal Road and Garoff area. Are they still part of the fiber project? Not the wireless, but the fiber project. That's they were part of.
I'll have to check on that for you, where those specific ones are. Because I don't have access to the mapping here, but I will get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Madam Chair, Chairman, I think that it's probably fairly evident that somebody or somebody's in the former Department of Development of Nova Scotia don't have a great opinion of Bristol County. That as you indicated, they elect as leverage of this program to start with. I had a chance to speak to the Premier within the past week, and I think that the reason that the change has come about is because a number of Bristol County residents have been calling his office and voicing their alarm and concern. He said that he really didn't realize that Bristol County was left out, and moved forward to correct that. So that's why we have been added. The 2,200 homes, I said, well, gee, there'll probably be no money left by the time we get around to us. And he said, well, if need be, additional funding will be put into this program. I'd like to see, I think this whole thing was probably quite confusing to our residents as to whether they qualify or if they don't qualify, or what is the comparison with our fiber or wireless in relation to costs. I think that we have a responsibility to educate the people more so on what the options are and what the actual costs will be.
Councillor Butler. Ward Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few things you need to be clear on. I want to mention, I've done bring up with Councilor Butler just brought up. I think we need to make it very clear what areas are going to be serviced here, wireless or fiber. It's not very clear right now, I don't think, on our website or on our maps, but the costs. The cost right now is what Brother Dave mentioned, 160, mentioned here 140. But our cost for fiber probably going to be under 100. We have 3 or 4 competitors. Fiber is always going to be the superior route through anything through the air. But our wireless is 49.5. And so even though you get the equipment paid for, the benefit was always seen, well, I get it right away. But, it's, Joe said, that's not quite the case, because they got a big background, same as everybody else, trying to get the lines and whatnot, so I think we do need to make it very clear to the people of this county what the ultimate cost will be. Now, right now, it appears that you can go ahead and accept for the premier's offer or the government's offer, if you're in a black dot area, and get $1,000 for the equipment in, the minute hours come through, they can shift for limited penalty. So it seems like kind of a waste that you could spend $1,000 on equipment, put it on Tom somewhere, but the minute hours became available at a much better price. Now, in some cases, it won't be available. And we said to the premier very clearly that, you know, we may need this system to help us in the far reaches of the county to help reach some places that are very difficult for us to reach. But price wise, it would make a lot of sense for people that can get either the fiber or the wireless to stay with them. You know, they are going to, you know, make the financial decision to switch if the service is just as good. And it will be, I guess. But Brother Dave mentioned the 3,700, and it was mentioned, Council Power mentioned the 2,200, 2,000, whatever figure you want to use. The 3,700 was not for us. 3,700 was the rest of the province. We were then had put on at 2,200. How we could be one county at 2,200 and the whole rest of the province is 3,700. That's where I agree with Council Brahma that the math doesn't add up somewhere. And I think there was politics being played with this when we didn't get announced at first. I think they wanted us to have to ask, you know, to be included. That's been made very clear, I think, to some of our staff that perhaps some of what's going on, you know, civil service don't agree with. But anyway, it is what it is now. We have an option for people in this county that they can take if they want. I thought it was fairly easy to find out whether you can or cannot get the one of these black cards. You simply go out and put your civic number in, and it'll either say yes, you're eligible, or no, you're not. But if you don't have any access to internet, it's pretty hard to do that. But they can always call Joanne and say, can you try my civic number and see if I'm eligible? So you can tell them in a hurry. But the numbers are out of whack. You know, there's no way you can have that many more in this county than anywhere else. So there's something just not right there somewhere. But I think we accept the fact that this helps us in some way, and that when ours becomes available, I realize it takes a lot longer than we want or anybody else wants. But that you know, our system's not only going to be better, it's going to be a better price. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Deputy Warden Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The 2,200 is our numbers. We know that's crap because the people that are working on this, they met with the Bell Nova Scotia and gave the correct numbers. So ours is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Next is our 2022-2023 capital budget. This is in the package here. As you notice, it goes through the different years. So we'll start with year one. We have for year one is year 2022-2023. First, we have our NSBI debt payment of $75,000. We have vehicle purchases in the amount of $75,000. Paving Ash Street and Sonder Road, $64,000. LED street light is $10,000, and that will come from the street light reserve. We have the internet project, the rural connectivity project, in the amount of $10,485,911. We have the Salem wastewater design in $34,107. Salem water design in the amount of $26,798. Both are coming from capital reserve. We have the municipal building renovations in the amount of $40,000. And that's coming from the operating reserve building replacement. We have the Plymouth sidewalk design in the amount of $50,000 from capital reserve. The Westville Road traffic impact study in the amount of $15,500. And then we have sewer projects, which are all coming from the operating reserve. The Linesbrook Town of Pictou upgrade, $75,000. Linesbrook PS4 and PS1 repairs, $20,000. Thorburn STP repairs, $55,000. E1 pump cores inventory, $100,000. PS3 repair line C, $10,000. PS1 repair River John, $30,000. PS1 repair Alma, $15,000. PS1 repair Thorburn, $15,000. PS3 repair Hopewell, $100,000, and Hillside System repairs, $50,000, for a grand total of $11,345,816. Right, do you want to have me comment on the budget for this proposed year?
Just a couple of, I did include in the package, and maybe I'll just, under municipal building renovations, the $40,000 there, that is for design costs, to renovate or do more renovations for the second floor. As we grow in staff, we're running out of space on the first floor. So the $40,000 is realistically what would be completed between now and the end of March, and that would just really be the design development of office space next down the hall from where you are. The Plymouth sidewalk design, I did include in the package correspondence between Logan and the Department of Transportation around that sidewalk and the need for the separate pedestrian bridge, and the department is basically saying at this point that doesn't need to be part of the design or build. And the other one that is there, the Westville Road traffic impact study, and that is really kind of the first step to determining if sidewalks are even potential there, because as everybody knows, the configuration of that road and the overpass, the two bridges, there is not a lot of room under the pass, the two structures to actually physically put a sidewalk in. So one of the potential solutions would be modifying traffic flows. So we would have to complete a traffic impact study to determine what impact potential jigging of lanes might have on the overall traffic. So that's those properties or those projects. The Salem Water, Salem Design, that's just ongoing. We did apply back in April for infrastructure funding under the green stream for the Salem Water wastewater, as well as the it's in year, I think, 3 of the project, McClellan's Brook Water. So we did apply for funding for those. The program, I think, was a 75-cent cost share. The province, when they rolled the project out to the CAOs at a meeting in early March, said the applications would be due the first week of April and they'd have them turned around in a month. So nobody would lose the construction season. Here we are, the 15th of August, and still no awards there. So what is contemplated here is finishing the design, and we could move to we're trying to also clarify whether we can move to the next stage of actually tendering a project, or what impact that would have on the funding applications that are in there. If there's no harm in tendering, then once the design is complete, hopefully in the very near future, and there's no impact, we could potentially go to tender on those projects. I think one of the things with some of these projects, especially the water and the wastewater, there is volatility in the market right now. So if we can get out to tender, we may be able to lock some pricing in. So I think that's a key, but right now we're just looking at finishing the design. And then under the sewer system projects, those are the projects that were identified when we set the sewer area rate that we could not fund through the rate. So that's what those projects represent. And Logan may wish to comment on any specific, if there's any specific questions that councillors may have on any one of those. So.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Do you have any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Board Curry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on the floor, I'd so move the acceptance of the cabinet.
Okay, you have a mover, you have a seconder. Second by Parker. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
So you move from the year one or the whole? Just 22, 23?
That's it. Okay, Councillor Boyles.
I was just wondering on the replacement of the lift station, when they planning to go back to?
Thank you, Councillor Boyles. What we have looked at, with, I assume you mean the hillside, the state. So the plan of the hillside lift station is more closely, more defined, I guess, as the overall hillside system. What we've been reviewing is, and we commenced that work this past year, system review to help come up with a set of improvements. The idea being that we wouldn't want to replace the entire lift station if we found that there was anything detrimental going on with the system that could get damaged or somehow negatively affect that lift station. So we want to go through the investigative process first, come up with a list of recommendations, and then move into implementing those recommendations. And that's what the goal really is here, is to exercise sort of a system of investigation and then immediate improvements, and having that sort of inform whether or not we need to in fact replace the entire lift station. Does that answer your question?
Well, I just looking for timeline too. I mean, these things, studies and things go on forever. What's your timeline to see have something like every year, you should know we're down spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these pumper trucks to be down there if that thing is flooding and water getting into the system and everything. Just wondering how many people are making something out.
I would say that we could certainly get the studies done within the next, within 3 months or so of having the approval from council on this capital budget. And have that inform those recommendations. Then the recommendations, I guess, the timeline to implement those, which really depend on what they would be. We find that, one example that we might find is that we have to go and do surveys of different residences throughout the entire community that feed into that system. That might take longer than if we just find that there are a couple of quick fixes here and there that we need to make, or that there are in fact very few issues, and that it's just a matter of moving do that replacement itself. So it will really depend on what we find, but I think in similar recent projects that we completed, for example, in Thorburn, they've only taken in a matter of a number of months to complete investigations. So, and we've already done some of the legwork on that. So I think leaving into that, we could probably come up with the first recommendations, the relatively short.
Just one other question.
Go ahead, Councilor.
I was just wondering, like, on the off of the hydrants, you think that you're going to check and see like there's big complaints of them hydrants, even the fire department will use it because they're not enough pressure that they fall away out to drink and get their water. Will that be checked too?
I know that we completed, prior to my time here, I know that we completed a water system analysis, a hydro flow testing program. I'm not sure if that you can speak to with the pressures and acceptable necessary.
Yeah, so I did have a chance to review some of the flows that come from the hillside hydrants. And although they are lower than sort of the average, they still give fairly sufficient water supply. As far as fire departments wanting to use the trend hydrants, I believe that's more of a department decision, more so than an operational decision. I think if they had to use these hydrants, they would be able to be utilized and be effective. What I can tell in these settings.
What they're telling us is that they're not pressure going on them. They can go up to 40 shifts, right? And they can fill that thing with bangle and to try and fill out of one of those hydrants in hillside, take them forever. So
yeah,
there is a problem with strategy, right?
There's definitely a drop in pressure in hillside. I don't argue that at all. But as far as an effective flow for filling tankers or even running a pumper truck off of for a structure fire, there is sufficient flow there. It's just dependent on how fast they want the tankers to be filled. And that's going to depend on how close the fire is to that location, how many tankers they have in the loop, and the average time between filling each truck. So as I said, I think that's more of a department specific operation that they're doing. But Logan and I did have the discussion about maybe doing some testing out there again to sort of just be sure of the figures we had, because I think the last study was done in 2017.
Well, yeah, I was just waiting when he did it, but he told me at that time, he said if he had to take, like, run the hose from there to a truck and then run from a truck, the hose to another truck, trying to keep the water so they could go to it, said, no, we wouldn't have no water. But it has to be checked. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Boyles. Gordon Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ones I have a question on, first ones in my area, Salem wastewater, Salem water. I've had several discussions with Logan on these. It seems to take forever to get this design work done. So the residents are getting antsy, I guess, and I keep telling them, that it's going through the process, but so my understanding is that it's now gone to the province to get them to approve the design, and that one department has approved it, but the other still has some questions. Are we any closer? Is my question to Donald. And can we go up to tender? I heard Brian mention a tender. Once we get the approval from whichever department hasn't approved it yet, can we go to tender, or are we going to be held up by the fact that the province hasn't approved the funding program yet?
So I can speak to the first half of that, I guess, in particular. And yeah, we have had different discussions around the fact that the design has continued to progress. Unfortunately, it hasn't been 100% approved yet. It has been sent off to the two departments, especially the Department of Public Works and especially the Department of Climate Change. The Nova Scotia Department of Public Works came back with a few comments, which our consultant has been working to make those changes, but the comments were relatively minor. To the point that I received an updated cost estimate from them today based on those comments. Nova Scotia Department of Environment has requested some additional information again, so we're providing that. However, that hasn't impeded their review of the materials to date. You understand that their reviews on materials soon as well. Likewise, the changes that they require. So I do acknowledge and appreciate the residents' patience with this project. We have been working to try to get it right. It's taking longer than originally anticipated, but I think I see the light at the end of the tunnel. We're getting to that point now. So I think we will receive comments shortly and be able to work quickly to make those changes. Costs have continued to increase. The cost estimates seek to reconcile to market factors, some related to the recent changes that were required by the Nova Scotia Department of Works as well. So that's all stuff that has to be considered. As far as the funding applications goes, and how whether or not that could impact the tendering on the completion of the design, I'm sure you can speak to that. But, yeah, as far as the design, we really are new.
It would be nice, through you, Madam Chair, to get to that tendering process, but just a little concerned with what I heard our CAO mention that perhaps like the hitch there because the province, even though they said in April they're going to turn these things right around, that they haven't done that. Will that affect this going to tender? Because I've been telling residents it's been going to tender some for the last 2 or 3 months, and some of them their sewer system's done now. So they're stretching to try and get the plans. So anyway, I'd like to ask through you, Madam Chair, to our CAO if there's any hold up to putting this out to tender and locking in some prices because of the province not putting funding.
Yeah, it's more, we just want to clarify that point because we'd hate to walk away from potentially 75-cent dollars by a technicality of putting something out to tender. So we just want to clarify that with the province first. And if there's no impact on that, then we can certainly, once the whichever department is left, I think it's environment left, to give their blessing on design and the changes are brought up, then we can go to tender if there's no impact on the potential funding. Other than that, what we've actually shown, I think in year 2 of the project, I think under the Salem Water, what we've shown for 23-24 is if we don't have a decision back from the province, that could actually potentially be funded through gas tax to advance the water portion. I believe water is more critical in that area than wastewater.
Thank you. The water is more critical. For some people, the wastewater is very critical, but the water's been terrible forever and a day. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Logan, just on the design work for this Plymouth Sidewalk, how's that progressing?
Yeah, thank you. I had a meeting 3 weeks ago with the Nova Scotia Department of Works on the return of their area manager, which resulted in had a positive result for us in terms of positive confirmation that we may proceed with design work with the understanding that separate pedestrian crossing would not be required in the acres. So we can proceed with just the portion of the sidewalk and not in the street.
So, and I don't mean to put dollar figures in your mouth or anything like that, but I always heard the figure between $200,000 and $250,000 to pour the concrete and get a proper slot. through that mud. Somewhere in that realm.
It will potentially, the big question mark on that is the pedestrian crossing at the Eastern Reset Road and the Collinsville Road, if it needs significant overhead, signage and things like that.
But we're not talking $1 million, $1.5 million or anything.
Even if we needed a Cadillac of the signage. So. Yeah, we're not talking. 7 feet.
And that design work should be done relatively soon.
Yeah, that design work, so we don't get snow in October can be done. Anytime.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boyles?
I was just wondering if there's any possibility that we could get I was asked this by one of the residents in town, readout of what was spent at that pump station with the pumper trucks over the last 5 years.
I'm not sure, I mean, I'm sure that we have records to some extent. Aaron, what would you think about getting notes from a 5-year period and disclosing them?
We can definitely do a find a cost spend. It's not gonna be something that will be your top priority. Spend it in one location. But it's something that could be done.
But this location is we're at problems. But
It's already been- it's not something that would be a high priority job
Yeah, I think
to do.
this is in Hillside.
No, it's not any location. It's
I think we, we can pull information and we have to see, I guess, what the nature of it. It's a difficult question to answer, I guess, for me, because it plays into a lot of questions. There are any number of reasons why a pumper truck may or may not be called in. And it's not always due to some sort of an issue with the municipal infrastructure, but it's something that we can explore, we can look at. So certainly, I mean, if that's something that benefits to yourself as a resident and others.
But it's, it's a big last year. I mean, I know some bills for 25,000 for just. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Boyles. Councillor Farmer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree, wastewater and water is very important for every area. Yeah. And no doubt Salem is in dire straits with that. However, I don't think that we should go to tender prior to giving any approval. But because if we go to tender and they say, oh yeah, you'll be eligible, but we go to tender and then they don't fund that project, we're on the hook for $5.5 million. It's a lot of money for 30 homes. There's roughly 30 homes in that area. That works out to $184,000 per home. You can provide a lot of, put a top of the line sewer system in for $30,000 each home. You can weigh in money. So we gotta be very careful. I think we haven't gone to tender without having approval projects, large projects like this. Without getting that funding from the federal provincial governments, I don't think it's possible. I wouldn't agree to it. I know those homes probably need it, but $5.5 million for 30 homes is a lot of money, so I think we should, before we go to tender, better make sure we get funding in place.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Farmer. I'm going to close discussion on this first part here of the capital budget for the 2022-23. There is a motion on the floor for it, for the approval of this. And then we'll move on and do years 2, 3, and 4 and 5 together as one, as future projects together. Okay, so the motion is for the approval. I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary, nay.
Hey,
1 nay. Okay, Councillor Boyles. Motion carries. Okay, so let's move on to years 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're gonna do them as one motion together. So let's start with year 2, 23, 24. We have again, our debt payment is 75,000. We have a vehicle purchase of 50, both of those coming from capital, from revenue. Then we have our LED streetlights, the amount of $15,000, from the streetlight reserve. We have our internet project in the amount of $19,229,475. We have our Salem wastewater project, in the amount of $3,075,957, and the Salem water project in the amount of $2,439,156. And as we spoke earlier, we hope to apply for funding for those. Then we have the Westfield Road sidewalk in the amount of $455,000. And then we have the water metering and Radiohead, $200,000, and that's from the water depreciation fund for a grand total of $25,539,588. Any questions or comments on year 2? Go ahead, Gordon Parker.
Westfield Road sidewalk, is that the one Brian just referred to earlier, that we had to, has to be some working with the province somewhere on what to do with that highway overpass? Is that what the Westfield Road sidewalk, or is that a different piece altogether that else people are asking?
I think the first one was the traffic study, so this.
Is this the building? Because that when we even estimate building it, but they're calling what the province is going to do, but if they can come to there, what are they going to do?
You want to answer that, please?
As well.
Okay, go ahead.
The Nova Scotia Department of Public Works has given some commentary around this. Nothing is exclusive, but I think part of the reason that costs will probably be based on their discussions around viability and non-viability for different options. Is an option that is there, only potentially expensive. I just wanted to point that out. Nothing. It can be exceedingly high, but potentially.
But it's in there for year 2 with 455,000. I don't think there's been any time worked on that or anything. We haven't done that impact study. They've been working on that overpass all summer. Every night, what they're doing, I'm not sure, like they're all rebuilding it. But looked into there before, and there's not enough room for sidewalk. Unless you eliminate that turning lane. I think that's an awful problem. I think the fair impact study is supposed to look at. I'm surprised that that number is in there. Because I would ask no one what the province is.
I think it could be any sidewalk, not specifically Westfield Road. We put in an amount for potential sidewalks, so it does say Westfield Road, but there could be other sidewalks that would take priority on that. It could be existing sidewalks that need repair or whatever. It's shown as Westfield Road, but it could be monies that are used for other sidewalks.
Okay, Madam Chair. I just find it misleading. I said, why would it just say sidewalk?
Yeah, and it could. We can change that to just say sidewalks.
Budget. It was 5-year capital budget, and it's a carryover from the previous year. It's on the previous year's capital budget, so it's just a carryover from the previous year's budget that was labeled as Westfield Road sidewalk. That's all.
Great. Councilor Thompson?
So just one clarification on this, because so it shouldn't say Westfield Road, it should just say sidewalks. Is that correct? So it could be case that $455,000 in that budget could go to partially to say Blue Acres or Little Harbor or wherever the sidewalk policy fits. Because we do have a ranking system right now for areas that are dire straits for sidewalks. I think Plymouth is probably highly ranked in that ranking system right now, is that correct?
On the previous year's sidewalk, the previous year's capital budget is West Road sidewalk. Now, if council wants to just put in an amount of sidewalks, that's fine.
Board Parker?
I agree with just putting in sidewalks for now, but I think council has to have the discussion on what are the priorities here. I'm ranking, you know, if there's certain areas that we want sidewalks in or don't want sidewalks in, but I don't think we can just say that the space for all sidewalks, we want them. But setting aside a certain amount of money for sidewalks is a good idea. And then once we have the discussion of where those priorities lie, you know, and having some design work, some costs, is certainly going to be helpful on that. But I don't think I agree with taking the Western Road out of there because it seems kind of misleading to somebody that thinks we're, you know, actually next year to build the sidewalk across the road, which we don't even know any details on it. So I don't have a problem going into just sidewalks, but I think council needs to have that discussion on it.
I would suggest you to take the amount of sidewalks along there. Then until you prioritize what sidewalks you want to do, I would suggest you take your future amount for sidewalks out.
I think it's pretty soon. That's
Okay.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair, that we remove the Western Road sidewalk for 55,000.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Second by Councilor Boyles. Okay. Any final questions or comments on that motion? Go ahead, Councilor One.
If we do go ahead and remove this, is there a chance that possibility with more information after our discussion, we can add sidewalks to that budget? Or are we closing the door?
I think we're just waiting to be more specific and outline our prop. From my understanding is that we'd like to go ahead and look at our priorities with the sidewalks and actually name them, not just be very, and be specific with our projects. So we can put them back in.
Right, but taking that 455 out.
On next year's budget, you can identify exactly which sidewalks you want to fund.
So, okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilor Thompson?
Just a question of Brian, if for any of these sidewalk projects, if we're looking for money from a provincial or federal funding source, and we don't have them as identified as capital priorities, is that a problem?
If they're not on specifically like one gas tax, if you're going to use gas tax, they do need to be part of your 5-year capital plan. But I think if you're specifically looking at a project or approaching another level of government for funding for a specific project, I think you're probably okay as long as council passes a motion, and that's all that's really required for most applications to go in, like even the ones that we submitted earlier this year. It was just a resolution of council saying that council endorses the project type thing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be here, but you have to endorse the project at the application stage.
I don't know why we take that line. I'm struggling with that. I still think we need to make a commitment to put sidewalks in. Councillor Parker and Gordon Parker engaged in a social function of myself. And we heard from very well spoken newly minted Canadian who identified that when they come here as escaping war or other horrible things around the world, they don't come here with a bank account full of money and they gotta walk everywhere they go. That's just one example, but I think, I'm struggling with taking sidewalks out of our priorities. I don't know why we would strike that line. Never a good answer yet.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Deputy Ordinary, my apologies.
Mr. Chair. I don't see anything problem take it out because we're gonna deal with this in November again, right? That's what the capital budget was not going to look at then, so this is year two, so we should be able to do
In November.
it. So.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor to remove the line that says, Russell Road sidewalk, amount of $455,000 from year two of our capital budget. See no other questions or comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary, nay. One nay. Motion carried. Okay, we're gonna move on to year three. Again, we have our debt payment to NSBI for the amount of $75,000. Coming from capital revenue, we have a vehicle purchase again, $50,000 for capital from revenue. Again, we have our LED streetlights, amount of $15,000 coming from streetlight revenue. We have our rural connectivity project, our internet project, in the amount of $17,920,500. And then we have our Hollinsbrook Sherbrooke Road Water Distribution Project in the amount of $3,232,200, which is coming from operating revenue, for a total of $21,292,700. Any questions or comments in year three? Okay, we'll move on to year four. Again, we have the same top three, the $75,000 for the debt payment, $50,000 for the vehicle purchase, and $15,000 for the LED streetlights. And again, we have the Hollinsbrook Sherbrooke Road Water Distribution Project amount of $3,232,200. Again, coming from operating revenue for year four, total of $3,372,200. Councilor Palmer.
Just on that, is there a need for it to be in both years? Doesn't matter, it's that project or any project, because in the prior year, so the same amounts. So it should. Let's see,
I don't think it's going to be done in 1 year, so carry it over.
so the estimated price is over $6 million. For water. That's. And again, we'll do the same as this project. If you don't get federal provincial funding, you can't do it, right? It's too much money to go on our own, so we have to have that, hopefully 75% of $75 cents. Is that the case? Is that project looked at as $6 million?
Well, Karen's doing that, we'll go on to year five. And we just have the same top three, the $75,000 for the debt payment, the vehicle purchase at $50,000, and the LED streetlights at $15,000. So we're a total of $140,000. So Karen's looking for that. I'll call for any more questions or comments on years 2, 3, 4, and 5 of our capital budget.
Sure, we didn't follow through with that. So the reason why I did for the sidewalks. I'm just curious if it's why put $455,000 for sidewalks in year two, but we didn't carry that. No, with West Road sidewalk, we put it into year two, but didn't carry it forward to the other years in case it came together. Was the reason why we didn't carry it forward. Let's take it out of year three, separating it from West Road sidewalks in what 3, 4, 5.
That's because it'd be completed in 1 year,
We're supposed to be completed in 1 year.
would be carried over, done over.
It would be carried over.
That's what we just said, okay, I'm just a little confused because we just said it wasn't really for Western Road, it was for any sidewalks, yeah. So I'm just-
I didn't say it was supposed to be for any sidewalk. It was on the previous budget for Western Road. We done in 1 year.
Well, I thought someone here said something about it wasn't Western Road in particular, so I just wondering why it was carried. So, thank you.
Thanks for your first year.
Yeah. Million, 2 years last year.
That's been.
Yes.
Old one.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we've gone through, the first year has been approved, and now we need approval for the years 2 to 5. Is someone looking for a motion?
That's a little.
Okay, moved by Councillor Butler. Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Any final questions or comments from years 2 to 5? Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward with the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Enthusiastic. Contrary minded nay. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the charitable tax receipt request for River John Pickleball. As you're aware, we've done this for other organizations in the past. Good question, councilors. Go ahead, Warden Harper.
I'll make a motion that we extend the charitable tax receipt work the same as we did in other areas with group down pickleball, but well, I'll comment on it later. The motion will be the same.
Okay, need a seconder? Councillor Elliott seconds it. Okay. Comment, Warden Harper.
I would just like to ask the CAO to comment on the size of the tax receipts that we're willing to do under these programs. Because my understanding can become a lot of work for office staff if we start taking too small of an amount and issuing those receipts for the press in the past. You know, we haven't done that. We did do it, I believe, for the wellness center, keeping a lot of extra staff time. So I'd like to hear his comments on the size of the nation before we give the taxes.
Sure. So what we've done in the past for projects or the most recent history, it's $100 or more. We would issue a receipt for that. I did speak to Wade Taylor last week and ran that number by him, and he was fine with that. He as the limit.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded nay. Motion carried. Okay, next we'll move on to number 15 with the funding request for River John Food Bank Sewer Extension Development Agreement. So it was presented here last council or at the last council meeting. 2nd of August concerning an extension of the sewer development in River John to reach John Food Bank. Brian, go ahead.
I don't have anything, Madam Chair, to add beyond what was in the memo as far as how this project came to light with us. As I say, kind of in the memo, it came to us through the department initially, and we weren't really 100% sure what project it was. And then I was invited to a meeting with this group on the 25th of July, where they outlined what their proposal was to me. And at that point, I said, really, they need to be the ones making the request to council, because it's not a municipal project. When it was looked at by staff, I'm going to say back in maybe May or June, it was originally looked at as a lateral installation, but it certainly isn't a lateral installation. It is an extension. So our initial kind of thoughts back then to the group were, this is something that does require a little more planning for us, because that would basically eat up our entire budget that we have for lateral installations for a year, type thing. So I don't really have anything beyond that, what was contained in the memo. So.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Logan, do you have anything to add?
I don't have a lot to add other than construction process that we put together at the end of 5 years, as well as a high-level site plan that shows the location of the proposed extension. And that the group that had been involved in the original request had indicated that their request was to service the corner of the property, which is how we determined, if you look at the cost, a total length of 150 meters. So that's to bring it to the property line, to service the property. Where the property, the owners take it from that point, it's really up to them how they want to take it across the site to their new building. So we did do a review of the cost proposal and came up with the cost that it. So, well, I'm taking questions related to this.
Okay, thank you, Logan. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. I just heard you mention the number 150 meters. So, and I'm looking here at the aerial photo. I believe that it's not fairly clear. Our meter marks 50, 100, 150, 200, 257. Is that correct?
The number shown there was 237, but that's
It might be a 30.
That's the distance to the driveway. So we're not looking at extending it to that point. So if you backtrack from that one back to the right, 200 and 150, that's where we're looking to take it to. So sort of two of those notches over to the 150 mark is where we're looking to take it to. The reason why we showed that driveway location, and it's shown in the profile as well, is because that's somewhat midway through the property. So normally, if we're going to take the service all the way past the property into other properties and things like that, we typically look to service it about the midpoint or near the driveway, just as common practice. However, there are strategic benefits to only going, say, the 150 or slightly above that, but say around 150 mark as well. When you look at the profile, which is down below, based on LiDAR data, shows a dip in the road and then an increase as we go towards, say, that 237 mark. If we get beyond that point, such that we require, such that we have dips and gullies in the pipe, it could very well result in a need for a narrow relief chamber, which would eat up this. It would spike this cost incredibly. The latest estimates we've got for those are in the order of $20,000+ on the book. So there's a benefit to keeping it where we propose as well, in terms of reducing unnecessary additional infrastructure that we can otherwise avoid.
Again, I do apologize. I wasn't there earlier this month.
Oh, no, sorry.
And I was out of the loop. So am I to presume that white area that I see beyond the driveway, 237 meters, is that the proposed location of the building?
No, I'm sorry. The proposed location for the building is the bottom left of that intersection. So I guess the property itself, the driveway might very well service the proposed new building. However, it would be to the other side of that road from that big white building that you see there. That's actually like a barn or something like that for the neighbor across the road. So there, but we see this in lots of different areas. If we're near the end of a serviced area, we'll service a corner of a property, and then it becomes the owner's responsibility to connect to that. So from a municipal standpoint, we felt like the 150 meter mark or thereabouts made good sense for provision of a service that's, a best value to the municipality without then getting into spike costs or things like topographical change.
Are the proponents aware that that's the proposal we're considering?
They in their request, they just requested that it be extended to their corner, so I'm not 100% sure where that 200 whatever meter number at first come from, but they only requested the extension to that property. So in our understanding, I guess, in my sort of full understanding, that it meets their needs entirely, so. But that hasn't been further communicated in any way aside from the fact that we believe it's that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Gordon Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have great difficulty with this ask. There are some of the reasons, I guess, but the main one is that we sat down here as a council grants committee trying to pare down over $1 million requests to 425,000. And we had to say no to a lot of people. This fund had been on, not for a sewer, but for part of the building, had been on that list. But then the province decided there wasn't, they were going to fund it completely. And so it's not good. You know, there's somewhere $1 million gone and dropped that one off. And now, after we've said no to a lot of other projects, including having to reduce the recreation project in that very village, if we turn around and come up with $30,000 out of whatever fund it is, it doesn't seem fair to me to all those other ones that we said no to. So I think we had a deadline of February 28th for the council grants, and you know, what was there at that time wasn't this, and so we used that figure to go by and trying to be fair to everybody else. So I think you know, there's fairness here somewhere. I'm not against the project. Don't get me wrong, the project is good. I think there's other places in this county that are long distance from the center that could use a food bank and maybe a health center or whatever. But we weren't asked as a council. We knew nothing about this, as our CEO said, until, you know, the last minute. Then they say, well, they're giving you 50 cents to do it. Well, not really. We didn't plan to spend anything in the first place. Now we're going to spend $30,000. That doesn't feel like somebody's giving us 50 cents. But I have great trouble, I would say, justifying how we would come up with funds for this, just out of the blue, without it being part of our legislative capital budget here, and all kinds of dollars needed in our current septic sewer systems in order to upgrade them and whatnot, and to put that money in there. And I also don't know how the former councilor brought it here and we agreed to extend to the Legion, how that was funded. Did they pay for that? Or did we pay for it? I think we need to look at what happened in the past. And also, if the line that was extended to the Legion is it the right size to continue on? Our engineer probably can answer that too, and service this new site, or would we need a bigger line depending on how much usage it's going to be. But to me, it comes down to a matter of treating everybody fairly. And I don't think we would be doing that in this case. That really the money should be coming out of that 650,000 provincial funding that was granted for the project, and not through, you know, they've expanded the project and whatnot. They also moved it to a piece of land that isn't serviced. It's on land that is on that is serviced. I don't think it's fair to ask the taxpayers for this, and I don't think it's fair to the other people that we had to stay home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gordon Parker. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Gordon Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question the board asked, besides the type to the agent, is that?
No, thank you for the question. No, we would be our existing line there is a pressurized sewer line, so this would be a pressurized sewer line extension. We don't anticipate high additional flow. With that said, and you'll see that in the comments and the process, the construction process, that we assumed there would be one standard E1 pump would be required, but this that plays into the overall capital cost. But also, if they were to come and tell us, we made assumptions around what anticipated flow rates and things like that as well. That's information that, if we're not, if we're talking about incredibly high additional flows, then that would be a different story. But every indication that we've had as well is that it's not going to be significant additional flow, that the operations that are going to be going on are office related and food bank related items won't be more than we would anticipate it. Small commercial or residential applications. So no, we're not concerned about the size of the line, and we made the assumption that it's going to be serviced with a standard E1 pump. And if they came back and said that they need an additional one, I would say that we can put that as a capital cost and part of it, something to that.
Thank you. Just on the second question, the first question, the Legion on this project.
I don't think it was funded by the provincial government, so I think we paid, in the letter it said that they paid 30,000, we probably paid 30,000. Paid more than. We did take it down to them, so. Just on this, and, it came to the grants committee, but funding this food bank, and the way I looked at it, one in the east, one in the west. We started with one in each community, but have a lot of food banks around. However, the provincial government came up and said they're going to fund the whole thing, which but maybe somebody else will come up with that. But to me, I think it's a small price to pay, $30,000 for this project. The project's going ahead no matter what. You never put anything into it, and to extend the sewer system 150 meters, cost share with the province, I think it's something that we should do as a municipality. Get the gas tax money there, that's what that's for such projects like this. And I guess. What's that?
You won't be able to use gas tax if everybody share with the province in another project.
Can't use gas tax.
No, it's called staff.
You could take it over from Catherine's or whatever, but I think it's a small price for this project. And show the community we are supporting it. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
I'm struggling with this as well, and I have many concerns coming to me from residents. And to take that money from recreation and deny the grant for them in the grant by the grant committee, and then turn around and have that money again, I'm struggling with that because it's adequately funded and it's a little late in the game to bring it to council is what the people's feelings are. And I'm getting lots of feedback. And I just wanted to share that people cannot understand. If they have that money, why can't they use the money that was budgeted within the project in the beginning? Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? So what's your pleasure then, Council? So, the funding request.
share with the province, for the maximum 30,000. That's
Okay, but if I should, we have a second for that. Okay, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any other final questions or comments on the motion? Go ahead, Councillor One.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have concerns too, but when you see that, when they presented their project, and I know you don't want to put a food bank in every town in the county. However, they are quite a distance from Hector Food Bank or the town of Bush, convention. And in this day and age with very little transit or difficulty getting through from towns, and for the weird where John is situated, I do think this is a really good project going along with chance for getting medical clinic there. So although I have concerns with how we did the grant process, and I'd be the first one to say that we should probably get a grant asking for this that we in February. But because they have the funding for the province and all they need is $30,000 for this municipality, I think that's really a small price to pay for us to get that type of facility in our county. So for that reason, I'm disappointed. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Boyles.
Yeah, the only concern I'm having right now is that council of the area has concerns, and you know, if the council of the area has concerns, and she's people coming to her and with concerns. I think she's more up on it than any of us, and I would, you know, I think that we should be listening to her and find out, you know, of either, you know, if she said recreation up there and looking at for a lot, they had cut it down a lot, and then now we're going to turn around and put $30,000, or whatever on this. We don't listen to our councillors, and we should be in here. Yes, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Another concern that residents have brought to my attention is the committee that has formed this has been formed less than a year. And having said that, down the road, the residents are concerned, who's going to maintain this building down the road? If it's all volunteers and they have the money right now to build it and they get it up and they get it running, how's it going to be funded? People are asking me, we have food banks on Tapler side and we have in Pictou. We're struggling for volunteers now. We're struggling for the product to put in them. And they have really big concerns about down the road. Is the municipality going to put more money in to maintain the overhead to keep this building operated once it's up and running? And they're bringing their concerns to me, and I wanted to share them with council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Elliott. Go ahead, Deputy Warden Murray.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I agree with Councillor. I think quite a few people also their concerns. Said this building, government center, but nothing building. And that was a big concern. And there's quite a few concerns people believe that it should be in a different place. I don't know where it's at. I have no idea where that's. I know where it's at now. I don't know what that what their comments would be. But I have certainly the same concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Butler.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering, can we ask for a 2-year budget? To get a better understanding of how they plan to operate successfully from a financial point of view.
Sure, that should be something that we could ask for. Councillor Elliott, you had your hand up. Wanted to add something to that? Warden Parker.
I admire people who start new projects and try and get something up and going in this community. But I fully agree with Councillor Elliott and the deputy warden that sometimes you just start out with, it's going to be all volunteer. volunteers are gonna look after this. Volunteers, as we all know, whether it's what's aspect of community, are hard to come by. And they do burn out. Where doing this is gone, then Greg, who's going to step in there and operate not just the food bank, but the outside as well. Pretty hard to find any health workers right now, but you know, those aren't going to be volunteer, you know, but still it's pretty hard to find them. I just think it's questionable whether volunteers can keep up, keep this operating, and it very well does come back here then. There been a whole lot of other things looking for requests to keep it running. Once it's up and going, it's pretty hard then to say we're going to shut it down. Now, I think it's very difficult to, you know, it looks good when you put the plan out. Councilor Butler said, ask for a 2-year plan. Sure, it will show volunteers running the place, but that hasn't been the record in the past on a lot of things volunteers do for record. Thank you.
Councilor Palmer?
Just on that, its community has this much, so many questions against them. Why did the provincial government go ahead and, that's the thing, right? The other thing is the application that came to us, in their proposal, they had one full-time position. Who's going to run that? That's along with volunteers. Where they're getting money for that? You don't know. That's the other thing. Myself personally, I wasn't voting for the project because I didn't think that they needed a food bank in Burford John. Because next thing you know, Garden Bean will be looking for food, right? So to me, I wasn't going to support it. But now that they get the facility, that they get $650,000 to build this facility, which is a lot of money. And the community having questions or fighting or it's, I don't know, the hobbies on each side or whatever. But, you know, you think that they're very supportive and hoping that that would succeed. And that's why I put the motion up there. Let's see if we go for it, we don't go for it. So that's why I put the motion forward to extend it up to the cost, up to the maximum, whatever the estimate was, 60,000. So, but if the councilor in the area has so many questions and things like that, then don't, so be it, but then find money somewhere else, but in their proposal, they did have full-time positions, where that money was come from. And like you said, it's hard to get volunteers. So wish them all the best, but it's gonna be a rough road. Thank you.
And Councilor Elliott, you want to add remarks?
Thanks. I just wanted to stress the fact that I want to make it public that it's not my job to decide if a project's good or bad, or if it's going to work or it's not going to work. My job, I believe, and I feel, as a councillor, is to bring the voice of the people into this room, and that's, I feel that I've done that. And that's what I'm basing this on. I'm listening to the people, and I'm bringing what people are saying here.
Okay, Councilor Dewar.
So the voice of the people, does that mean like the churches, the fire department, the lodge, or the mines spot, or who's the voice, just individuals, or is it groups?
Anybody within District 4 that has spoken to me.
Okay, but is there any organization?
No particular organization has come to me.
Okay, any final?
Up to 30,000, or was it up to?
Well, whatever the estimate is, the cost estimate, 32 or 31,000, some.
Yeah.
And what not to responsible?
They'd be responsible.
Right, so the motion's been clarified. We're going to call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, nay.
Right.
Nay. Can I have the three? Yes. Do you want to clarify the motion once again? The motion was to cost share the sewer up to, the 30, half of that 62,000 with no cost overages. That they would be responsible for that. Okay? Just to clarify, we have 3 yays.
3 nays,
No,
Yays.
yays.
3 and 4.
3, 4
I need the nays,
nays.
A votes.
Very clear.
It's up on the screen.
Did you vote, Larry?
My hand should be up on the screen.
But it's not.
That's not.
No.
Well, they have it on screen already.
It's a nay.
So.
I think we need clarification of Councilor Turner's vote as well.
You can say
Is nay. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so motion is defeated. Okay, let's move on to number 16, community announcements. Go ahead, Councilor Bueller.
I just want to talk for a half a second about something we talked about utility, okay? Talked about the water. What we went through the river for years, just because Andy Ganesh had a system down there and they give us the same system for Victor County to pay for it. It didn't work out down there and it doesn't work out here. It costs too much money for the water. River and French. Anyway, they wouldn't do anything because they got the face. Well, I was some proud to hear on the radio that there's a family or a business in Antigonish County that took URB off. So the first time the URB offered $100 and some thousand, a little bit. They went to court gate. They came back and said, we'll give you $280,000. We're not thinking back again, and this morning we actually wanted $780,000 that company got from the URB. I guess it just takes somebody that'll stand up for those people. And we've been punished in Victor County because of the URB lots of times. And I can't understand how a group as themselves, and they get new people every once in a while, and I don't know where they managed to scrape them up. But anyway, if they could be elected, I'm sure we'd have a lot different feeling. Now, I think that the other thing that burns me up so much about it was last week, the price of gas in New Brunswick went down 13 cents. I said, I'm not buying gas. I gallon can of back. This will have me up to the 13 cents, but we'll get a cent through that ours went up 8.5 cents to 9 cents the next morning. Like, for what? The barrel was worth $93.10. What was it worth $93.10 before? Like, they cannot justify anything that they do as far as I'm concerned. And I don't know, sometime I'm going to try to get some sort of a letter motion put through here to set the province and see if there's something can be done with this. Does anybody in this room feel the same way I do about them? They just do nothing for everybody. And it takes, they'll put the gas down 3 cents, 4 cents. But if it goes up a little bit, they'll put it up 10 cents. There's none, they forget about the little people that are paying all the bills. But anyway, I'd love to take the long way. But anyway, I haven't got enough money to, but years ago, we tried to do that. We sent the wrong people. We lost big time because we sent the wrong people to take them home. But anyway, I was so proud of this group initiative. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilor Dewar. Councilor Parker.
Thank you. On that very case, the names were Partridge and Wolf. They owned a small business on the side of the South River that was flooded. They claimed they were flooded because of the actions of the highway contractor for the Dublin Bridge. It took them 11 years. 11 years. I mean, fight through the courts to get some satisfaction. The principle here, and it applies in some places in Victor County, is that if one branch of government or an individual does something that negatively impacts others, they're responsible. That's an important principle of law. And that's been part of my argument about the less room for acres. The government shut that highway through there in 1972, 50 years ago. And made no allowance whatsoever for pedestrians. Okay, now. Here this evening, Greg Chisholm indicated we might still be on the haul for that bridge across, Fox Brook.
No,
But I agree, it should be a no.
no, that's.
There's an important principle. No, let's stop interfering,
Okay,
please.
point of order, listen. Let's keep it civil in here.
Okay? That the principle is that when you do something, deliberately or by happenstance, you're responsible to fix that. Okay? That's an important principle in life and in law. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Parker. Warden Parker.
Chair, I want to say that I fully agree with Councilor Dewey. I know anybody didn't agree, but UARB is they're almost above politics. They're above government. You know, they can make decisions and don't need to be elected and responsible to anybody. But what can we do? That system is what we have to work under for now. Something changes. What I wanted to announce is that Viola's Place, homeless shelter for Pickett County, located in Nebraska, is going from 8 inhabitants per night to 20. Great news. They got a lot of provincial funding to help them fix that old church up. So the upstairs is down. In fact, I think they're already up there. So now they're responsible for the operating costs. So, which if you go 8 to 20, there's a great increase in the operating costs. So the board there has decided to try and raise some money. So they're having a walk on August the 27th. Everybody is invited. It's on the Sampson and Albion Trails, August the 27th, is Saturday. You know, come, bring your children, bring your dog, whatever, bring a little money to it. But it's to raise money to help operate that place this winter. And if anything, the way the economy's going, the price of food, rent up so high, they're probably going to still have people waiting outside the door. So if you want to sponsor anybody, you can. If you want to come yourself to walk, then even better. Because the more support, the better. The segment of our society that definitely are going to need to help this winter. And without COVID, hopefully they'll be able to take the maximum number. The last few years, they're going to take 4. So there'll be a lot of people left standing outside.
Give a time for that walk, Warden.
9 o'clock in the morning.
9 a.m.
Is the beginning of registration, and the walk starts at 10. It's not a long walk. I think it's 4 or 5 kilometers or whatever, up 3 of them back, and then get a free barbecue at the end of it. It should be a good event, and like I say, if you want to sponsor somebody, I'm always available to sponsor, of course. But the event is people turned out, but it's for a great cause, so please keep it in mind. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Elliott.
If anyone is looking for some good meals, West Branch Community Hall is holding a breakfast Saturday the 20th, 8 to 11. Eat in and take out, $10. Same day, Tony River Community Hall, 4 p.m. Seafood chatter, takeout only. And for John Fire Department annual chicken barbecue Sunday, August 21st, 12 units sold out, takeout only, adults 15, children.
What's happening, District 4? Busy. Anyone else? Any announcements? Oh, sorry, Council Palmer.
I just wanted to announce that Saturday, August 27th at 2 p.m. with the unveiling of our Form 150 kiosks. It's going to represent the last 150 years of the community, of the village. And we're going to have the fire department's going to have a fun day for the kids from 12 to 3. Unveiling of the kiosks is going to be 2 o'clock, and we'll after that have another entertainment. So, you know, that's coming up.
Okay, any other final community announcements? And now we'll move on to 17, emergency resolutions. Emergency resolutions. Seeing none, I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your summer, and we'll see you the 6th of September.